It's Gilliangladrag. It's Gilliangladrag. It's Gilliangladrag Fluff-a-torium. 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 Show.
Dog this morning who will not jump up on the chair. Right, okay, have your treat. I'm done. I am done. Right, take your blankets. That's it. Your guest appearance is over, Bowie. I'm going to ignore your rider for next week. Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to position my chair. How is everybody? Well, I hope. We cannot ignore the elephant in the room this morning, just briefly. It is snowing here, which is quite unusual. I mean, I don't think it's snowed for a couple of years, has it, Chris? Oh. No.
I think probably globally there has
No,
been
I'm not
snow.
talking about globally. I'm talking about here, where we live.
I've not been counting.
No, anyway.
And your glasses are rattling against your
I'm
microphone.
sorry. I know, I'm conscious of that. I'll put them on my head so you don't get cross.
Angry about that, actually.
Anyway, it's snowing. Very exciting. Boo hasn't been out in it yet. Obviously keeping her dry because I thought she was going to make a guest appearance, but no. Welcome to knitting with circular knitting needles. How to knit with circular knitting needles. Now, these bad boys are, in my opinion, brilliant. Okay, they're not bad boys, they're good boys. However, so many customers that come into the shop have never used them and don't know how to use them and are a bit scared of them. And they're like, well, I can knit, but I only want to knit straight up and down. I don't want to knit round and round. These make life so much easier. Well, when you're knitting anything really, what I'm going to run through briefly today is how to knit the hat. Well, I'm not going to show you how to knit a hat. I'm going to talk about how you do it on circular needles. Strange noises coming from the side here are the dog who is now rolling around and making noises. And then I'm also going to show you how brilliant they are for sleeves on sweaters, okay? Jumpers, actual jumpers, and obviously then socks, leg warmers, anything that you want to knit that's like tubular, basically. And then at the end, I'm going to show you how brilliant they are also for knitting straight, backwards and forwards, instead of on straight needles. So actually, you can ditch the straight needles. I mean, I still use straight needles for some stuff. But I think there's instances where if you've got an awful lot of stitches and there's a chance they might fall off your straight needles, the circular ones are fab. So how do they come? They come obviously in all the different widths of the needles, and then they come also with different cord lengths, okay? So this is a long one, whoops. Which is I think 120 centimetres, and these are 12s. And then they also come diddy tiny ones like this, which is a 25, I think this is a 25 centimetre one. So this is the sort of thing you'd use for socks and sleeves. And then this is the sort of thing you'd use for something huge, big sweater maybe, big blanket, and then all of the sizes in between, all right? They come in metal. Oh, sorry, what have I done now? I keep banging everything. They come in metal, they come in wood, birch, they come in plastic, resin. Which ones are better, you're going to ask me? I know, please feel free to ask questions as we go along. Chris will read them out and I'll answer them if I can. And if I miss them, I'll try and answer them later on the chat. Which ones are better? I absolutely do not have a favourite. The most important thing actually when you're using a circular knitting needle is the smoothness, the transition between this bit here and the cord, okay? What they're actually made of here, personal preference, I mean, I really wouldn't worry about it unless you're going to knit day and night when you might develop a preference. I wouldn't worry. I must also hasten to add.
What sort of preference would you have?
Well,
knitting
some people,
day and night.
No, if you're
Is it
knitting,
a noise thing?
Well, it might be. Oh, are you going to comment now on noise? Don't comment on noise.
Or light?
I would say some people have a preference for wood because they say it feels warmer. Some people have a preference for metal because they find it easier. Some people say the stitches slip along more easily, yada yada. I don't have a preference, and I can tell you something for nothing right now. There's a shortage of circular needles because of the pandemic. We're finding it very hard to get certain sizes and certain sorts. So mix and match, don't worry about it, and just get the size you need. That's the most important thing, just get the size you need. All right, so let's talk hats first of all. Our new hat kit, which is now under new on our website, is the Mrs. Moon Super Quick hat pattern, 1 skein of super chunky and 2 pairs of needles. Generally speaking, as you probably know if you already knit, you'll use a slightly smaller sized needle on the rib, and then you'll go up to a slightly bigger needle for the body of the hat. So you would choose the same ones, but they're circulars that come in our kit. All right. What I'm going to show you is how easy it is to just knit this hat on the circular needles, because here's a secret that no one knows, which is just brilliant. You only ever have to knit with a circular needle. You never have to purl in order to create your stocking stitch. The reason being, well, I find it hard to get my head around this, but the reason being is I think that you're only knitting it from one side. You're just going round and round and round. So you're never approaching it from the other side. So you're just knitting and you just get the stocking stitch. So much easier, so much quicker, no seams, no joining, okay? And I'm going to talk to you about what happens when you reach the apex of something like a hat or something where you're decreasing your stitches, making it smaller to shape it, okay? Which invariably just means you're knitting 2 together. I mean, the word decreasing makes you think, oh my God, it's so complicated. It's really not. I mean, this pattern is so simple. You're decreasing by knitting 2 stitches together, so you're coming to the top of the hat, and that's when potentially the cord of your knitting needle, your circular round needle, might be too long, and I'll show you what to do. All right, first things first, I usually use long tail cast on. Use whichever cast on you like, but long tail cast on is brilliant. If there's time at the end, I'm going to show you how to do it as an added bonus, okay? It's brilliant because it's more stretchy. And because it's more stretchy, your stitches don't sit so tightly around your needles, and it gives you a better stretch when you've finished something. So at the end, it's better because it's stretchier. Okay, so I'm going to start talking about the hat first, and then I'm going to briefly talk about the jumper, okay? Then I'm going to talk about the sleeve, and then I'm going to talk about straight. So I have cast on, using my long tail cast on, 44 stitches as per this particular pattern that we have with the hat kit, or if you've bought it from our website, the Mrs. Moon Super Quick Hat, I think it's called. Okay, if you buy it from us, it's emailed to you via Ravelry, okay, just so you know. And I'm just using some of the Plump, which is the Super Chunky by Mrs. Moon, which comes in this vast array of colours sitting. If you could go to the overhead shot, actually, Chris, por favor. If you're on Instagram, you can only see these ones here. So let me just bring some in. So it comes in a vast array of colours, all the colours of the rainbow. Okay, 1 skein of this is enough to do your hat. There's even neutrals and all the rest of it, okay. So this is what I'm using. 1 skein of this makes 1 hat. I've just got some left over here that I'm just using. And I'm just going to show you the start. All right, so to start with, I've cast on my 44 stitches, okay. So they're sitting along my needle like so, okay. Then you will need some sort of stitch marker. This is just a little piece of waste yarn, okay. You could just use any old bit of yarn and slip it onto your needle, and then you'll know where you've started and where the end of your kind of row or round is, if you like, okay. The other thing you can use is a normal stitch marker, which is one of these, like we sell in the packs, and then you can just clip that onto your last stitch. So again, you know where you've finished and where you're starting from, okay. So the very first thing to do is join. So your pattern will say you're going to join this in the round. Now, the one thing that usually potentially would go wrong here is that you might twist your stitches. Here's an example of some twisted stitches. So if you've got your stitches like this, so they're twisting round, you're going to end up with a twisted hat. Okay, so that's not what you want. You want to make sure, if you go to the other shot, Chris, please. The other overhead shot, please, Chris. Hello?
Yes, we are on the other overhead shot. I'm following along.
Oh, have you zoomed in though? Can you zoom
Yes.
out a bit then, please?
Zoom out.
Yes, that's the one I'm talking about. Okay. All right, so if you can see, I've got all of the stitches sitting neatly, okay, so that they aren't twisted. So I've got the stitches sitting here and the other bit sitting inside here. This is really, really important. If they're twisted, it's all going to go to pot. So make sure they're not twisted. Then you are simply going to knit into your first stitch, okay? So bring it together, and you're not doing anything complicated, just doing a knit stitch here, okay? Now, this pattern calls for a rib. The first bit is a rib. So obviously, then I'm going to purl, and then I'm going to knit, and then I'm going to purl, and then I'm going to knit. So let me just do a few stitches. I'm not going to bore you with this because you all know how to knit and purl. I know I was talking earlier about creating a stocking stitch just by doing knitting, but obviously if you want to do a rib, you are going to just knit and purl. I think it's for the first 8 rounds, okay? So a round is obviously going to be when you get back to this marker here, okay, and you've gone all the way around, okay? And that's it. That is joining your stitches in the round. Okay, let's move on to one I've prepared earlier. I'm just going to put that to one side. I'm going to bring this one in. This is our new hand-dyed, super chunky birdhouse in your soul. We've just dyed up a batch and we have now sold them all, but we will be dyeing some more next week. Okay, so if you're after some of this, watch this space and I'll announce it on social media when we get more. Okay, so I've started knitting with this. I'm purposely using needles that are too long. I'm using circular needles that are too long because I want to show you what magic loop method is, okay? So ignore it for the moment. I'm just going to talk you through, here's my 8 rounds of rib, okay? And then obviously now I'm just knitting, knit, 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 and that's going to give me this stocking stitch. Gorgeous, super easy. As you can see, these are the birch knitting needles, not the metal ones. So let's just do a few stitches so you can see. So there's nothing complicated about it. It's easier. You're just knitting. There's no purling. And around and around and around you go. And I think this pattern, if you're not doing colour work in this particular pattern, it just calls for you to carry on knitting, I think till it measures about 21 centimetres from your cast on edge or your edge of the rib. I can't remember which now. I need to look at the pattern. So you would literally just mindlessly now knit round and round and round. And I just want to show you as well this long tail cast on here and how lovely and stretchy this is. And I do, honestly, if once you've learnt long tail cast on, you'll never cast on any other way again. So that is that. Now, when you get to the bit of the hat, let me just get a hat here. When you get to this bit of the hat where it's obviously decreasing and it's going to get smaller at the top, what you could do, come back to me for a sec, Chris. What you could do is use double pointed knitting needles. Now, I haven't actually got any on the table, but these are double pointed knitting needles are basically 4 or 5 straight needles with no ends on them. They're tapered at both ends. And you put all your stitches evenly around them and then you kind of do like a sort of Krypton factor. Well, I'm sure it's fine. Lots of people love double-ended knitting needles, double pointed. I don't. I prefer to carry on using my circular. So you could either swap to a circular with a smaller cord for the top or use magic loop method. Sorry, I think there's a question. So I'm just going to, am I going too fast?
I don't know.
No,
I wasn't
hopefully
paying
not.
any attention. I was reading the messages.
Okay, go on then. What's the question?
So Ruthie Toothton. There we go. There's a mouthful. On Instagram says, When I have knitted in the round before, you can see where my round starts. What am I doing wrong?
What, each time you go around, you just need to be aware that you might be leaving it too loose when you get to the end of each round. So really just make sure that your stitches are a bit tighter. Be conscious of it. Use the stitch marker so you know when you're getting to the end of each round, and make sure that there isn't you're not too slack at that point. Oh, another question. Yes.
There's another question.
Yes.
And that question is from Lisa Ashurst on Instagram as well.
Yes.
Hi, what happened when you reached your marker?
Well, you just carry on. You just carry on. Okay, so my marker, oh, it's just gone. Okay. You basically, let me just carry on knitting while I'm talking to you. When you reach your marker, you've done a round or a row, okay? Your marker's just there to tell you that, because when you get to a certain point in the pattern, you will need to start decreasing, all right? So it may say, carry on knitting till you're 21 centimetres from the edge. But then the next round, you're going to have to say, I don't know, knit 2 together here, knit 2 together there. So you need to know where your rounds start and finish. That's the point of the stitch marker, okay? But when you're doing the main body of it here, you just ignore it. You just ignore it. All right, so here's an example of this magic loop thing. I'm just going to quickly show you before I get back to the questions. So obviously my cord is too long. All I'm going to do is I'm going to go around here and I'm just going to pull it through like so. And then I'm just going to move my stitches on. So all you're doing with the magic loop, the word magic, well, you know, is it magic? It's a kind of magic, I don't know. The loop is the key word. You're basically sticking a loop of the circular needle out of the way. So you're essentially making your coil, your circle smaller, and then you're just carrying on. So as you reach the apex of your hat, you're just using that magic loop, sticking the loop out. It's a bit of a pain in the arse, I'm not going to lie. But it's fine, and actually, on a scale of how much of a pain in the arse it is, I'd say it's far less of a pain in the arse than using double-pointed needles, in my humble opinion. Sorry, was there another question?
Yes, Kerry Curtis.
Hello, Kerry Curtis. You're an expert, Kerry Curtis.
Well, get your head round this one.
Oh no,
How do you change needle size?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. Thank you, my darling. Yes. All right. Actually, do you know what? I was going to talk about that. Changing from one needle to another needle. I'm not going to show you on this. I'm going to show you in a second on something else. Actually, in fact, let me do it now. All right, so moving on to this little thing here, I've literally just started knitting a little sleeve on here to show you. I mean, if you're knitting sleeves, this is an utter revelation, let me tell you. But let's just talk about changing needles. Right, so here I am on this needle here, okay. Can you go to the overhead for me, darling, please? Say I wanted to change to this little needle here. All you do, literally all you do, where's my marker? There. All you do is you stick your new needle in, okay, and you just start knitting with it. So say I needed to change to this new needle here, then I just ignore my old needle. In fact, let me just push it out the way a bit. And then I start with the new one. So when you're changing from one size to another and you're going from your rib size to the new size, just stick your needle in and away you go. And then eventually all of your stitches will end up on your new needle, and you just discard the old one and carry on with your new needle size. So that's swapping from one needle to another. You just start using the new needle, okay? So like when you're doing this here, this bit of the rib was on the 10 mil. And then I'm carrying on the 12 mil. So going back to my 12 mil here with the magic loop, I'm just keeping this loop out of the way, okay? And I'm just knitting away happily. But then when it sort of starts to stretch a bit, and I've got essentially what happens is as you decrease is that you've got too few stitches for the length of the needle, so they start to pull a little bit, and it starts to get very tight. So you can use this method whenever that happens. and just constantly keep sticking your cord out in a different place so that you give yourself some more stitches to work with, okay? And just move your magic loop around as you need to, and then just carry on knitting. And you just keep going round and round and round and round and round. And so eventually I will decrease this and it will just get less and less stitches. Obviously my cord will be sticking out in a massive loop to the side, but I can still just knit around the small parts, a bit like I am here, but imagine a big loop sticking out. And then eventually I'll be done. I'm just going to talk to you about these little tiny needles actually, unless there's another question, is there? No, not at the moment?
Not at the moment.
Let me talk to you about these little tiny needles. These are the Knit Pros where each end is the same length. It's a 25 centimetre needle, okay? These are the Zing Knit Pros where one side is slightly shorter than the other side. Now, it's up to you how you want to use these, but when I'm using them, I like to use this end to sort of work with. I'm just going to talk to you about how much I love these though, because although I'm now changing from one size to another, I know, and I'm using, interestingly, our new Sheppey's Metropolis yarn, which I'm rather liking, I must say. It's knitting up really nicely, it's nice to use, but I do love knitting with a 4-ply yarn. And I tell you why, because there's so little effort involved. You can keep really still. The only thing you do, if you keep the stitches right at the end of the needles, look, you can pretty much just completely keep still, and you don't really have to move your arms at all. You know, unlike when you're doing something really, really big and huge, and you're constantly having to sort of move it around on your lap. This is just tiny and gorgeous. So these are perfect for sleeves. Let me just now move over to this sweater. Okay, so here again, slightly different. This is my hand-dyed kids silk mohair, again, which we've also sold out of, and there's more coming. But this was a fade set that I did, oh gosh, nearly a year ago now. Scary how time flies, isn't it? And again, you can see this has just been knitted on the circular needle, so it's completely seamless. And there I am, there's my rib at the bottom there, and you can see now I'm going up the sweater, and I think, I can't remember the pattern, but I think you get to a certain point and then I've got to divide it off for the sleeves and the back of and the front. So you'll see what I'm using here for stitch markers when I'm doing this. This is the, oh gosh, Comfy Pullover Light, I think is the name of this pattern, also on our website. It's the one that's like a V-neck, and it's very simple and very plain, and we've got it in blue on the website. You'll see it, but you can see I've got 2 stitch markers here on my circular needle, one there, one there. So one lot of stitches is the front, one's the back, and I know that when I get to a certain point I'm going to have to divide it and shoot off for the sleeves and so on, and shape it a bit more. But you can see, oh, another question, yes?
Coripri on Instagram.
Yes.
Interesting knitting style. Can you feed the thread using your left hand like continental knitting style?
Yeah, absolutely. People use this with continental knitting. Don't ask me to do continental knitting because I can't. But yes, so you would have the ball the other way around, and you would do it in exactly the same way. It's just getting your head round it. I'm sorry, I'm not going to show you that way because I can't do it. I don't knit continental style. But yeah, I've seen people do it, and absolutely yes, it is perfectly possible. Okay.
Kerry says the little needles frightened her.
Oh, really? But I just think when you're doing something like a sleeve, to have 5 double pointed needles hanging, so basically 5 double, you sort of have them like this when you're going round, and you've got a certain amount of stitches on each one, and you go from one to the next. With me, they like drop out on the floor and it's all a nightmare. I don't know, maybe my knitting's loose in some way. But I just think these are an absolute revelation when it comes to, certainly when it comes to sleeves on a jumper. I just think absolutely brilliant, and so much faster than doing it any other way, in my opinion. There we go. So that's circular knitting needles. I think there's really not much more to say. I think that the most important thing about using them is when you first start. Ooh, hang on, get that extraneous pair out of the way. Is when you first start and really making doubly, trebly sure that you haven't twisted your stitches. That's the most important thing about it. And if you haven't twisted your stitches, then you are off and away. Now, do I have any more questions on this? Or would anyone... Yes? No? Maybe?
Yes.
Go on.
Glenys Clark.
Yes.
Can you just use any pattern with normal needles?
Can you use any pattern...
I think she might be about to say something else, because then she said, whoops.
With normal...
maybe what she means is, can you use any pattern... Yes, here we go. Can you use any pattern... No, she said it again. Can you use any pattern with normal needles? Does she mean...
Can you take a pattern that uses straight needles and use it? No. It needs to be a pattern that uses needles in the round, otherwise it's not going to make any sense. And also, if you use a pattern that uses straight needles, then invariably you're going to end up with pieces that you're going to need to piece together. So this is a way of creating seamless knitting that doesn't need piecing together. The pattern will be written completely differently, okay? I would strongly suggest, if you've never used them before, come back to me a sec, Chris, please. If you've never used them before, I would thoroughly recommend trying the hat that I'm showing you. It's under new on our website, with one skein of this Mrs. Moon. Or if you don't want to buy that kit, you can use a cheaper yarn with it. But use that hat pattern, I think it's £2.50. It's a great way to start. It's a great way to get your head around the concept if you've never used it before. It's quick, it grows fast, you'll finish it quickly. If it goes wrong, it's not the end of the world to undo it and start again, because it's not all that big. And once you've done a hat, I think that's the way to go. Then move on to a garment, perhaps. Don't launch in with a really complicated fair isle jumper knitted in the round if you've never done it before. Question.
Carol on Facebook says, what about for socks? How many needles do I need? Do people really knit socks?
Are you asking me that?
Yeah, no, I am.
It's a massive thing, darling. Yeah.
Is it? Oh, I'd like some knitted socks.
Okay, noted.
Could you knit me some? Maybe.
So I have to fess up here and say I'm not a big sock knitter.
Oh.
Okay. Clary, our knitting teacher, would be better placed to answer this. However, I do know that you can knit socks on these little circular needles. I think, again, you're probably just going to be careful about which pattern you're using, and use a pattern that knits socks on circular needles rather than DPNs, because it might change the pattern. Sorry not to offer more advice on socks. Can certainly vouch for them for sleeves, I must say. That's an absolute no-brainer. And actually, leg warmers, hello. Let's bring back the leg warmer. It is snowing.
Please don't.
Sorry?
Please don't.
Please don't. Please don't bring back the leg warmer.
No.
So easy, though. Do you know what? That's another great idea for if you've never done it before. You could even make them up. Like you could even... No, find a pattern. But basically, you do a little rib, you'd do a tube, and then a little rib on the top. Done. Almost easier than a hat, actually, because you wouldn't have to
what are those
decrease.
Things? What are those things? Is it a snood?
Snood. That's the other thing that we do knit on circular needles. Thank you, darling. Gosh, unexpected top tip there from Christopher. Or a snood. So we have a number of patterns as well, just to knit a snood. Again, super easy, probably more easy than a hat, because you don't need to decrease, and then you're going to end up with the equivalent of a scarfy thing. Obviously, you do need to be able to get it over your head.
Question.
Long tail cast on. Yep.
Question from Boho Bag Lady on Instagram.
Yeah.
Good name.
Good name.
Do you move the marker up at the end of each row?
So if you're using the little piece of waste yarn, you'll just get to it if you're and you'll just swap it onto your other needle, and then just carry on. Yeah. If you're using the little clip-on jobby, you can move it up a row every time you get there, or you can leave it at the bottom and just eyeball it. Probably best move it up. If you're using very thin, narrow needles like these, you can actually just pop this over instead of waste yarn. It just wouldn't fit over my chunky 12mm. Okay. So there's a few ways of using the locking stitch markers, but yeah, they're probably meant to be used rather than sticking them over the side, you're meant to just feed them through and just attach them to your knitting, lock them, and then have it hang off the front so you can see when you're there. Yes.
There's a theme coming up here.
Oh,
Rachel
no.
Stringer on Facebook says, can you demonstrate how to add a second colour?
Yes, I can.
Kerry Curtis,
Ooh.
willy warmers. Kerry, leave it. Leave it, Kerry.
So when you're adding a second colour, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to quickly unravel this tiny bit that I've got left here. Oh no, it's all going horribly wrong. Hang on. I'm just going to unravel it and use the other end. Okay. Oh, so sensible,
Is that
Gillian.
like recycling?
Hey?
Is that like recycling?
Recycling? No.
No.
Anyway, right, okay, so using a new colour. So say I was going to start a new colour here. There's two ways of doing it, actually, but I would, generally speaking, what I do, let me show you what I do. Do you want to go to the overhead? I just bring
I'm going
this
to go
in.
tight.
Oh.
There we go. I'm tight.
Oh my God, he's so tight. All right, so I go in and then I just bring it around that needle like that, okay? And then I start knitting with it. Comme ça.
Can't it just pull
Right.
out if you do that?
Yes. Wait for it. And then I would
Alright,
tie it at the
okay.
back when I'm a few stitches down and make sure it doesn't. Then I'd weave in the ends. So hopefully that explains that. That's literally all that. Let's get rid of that. That's literally it. Okay. Let me do a few more stitches so you can see what happens. Now, what I'm going to do, talking of changing colours, let's get a few more stitches up there. I'm just going to move on now to using these straight. Okay. All right, so there we go. Changed colour. Ta-da! It's as simple as that. All right, now I'm just going to just talk about using them straight, and then I'm going to, if I've got time, I'll show you long tail cast on. Okay, so this blanket here, do you want to come back to me, Perfect Darling, please? This blanket here I've just finished in the raster. Oh my God, so gorgeous. So gorgeous. It's like super fine merino. It's weighty, it's lovely, it really is gorgeous. It's so soft. Anyway, I digress. Knitted this on using a circular needle, but straight, okay? This is the raster, the Malabrigo hand-dyed raster that I've used for that, in lettuce and frank ochre, if you're interested. Here's another one that I'm now doing using the Rico Super Chunky in lilac and pastel yellow, all right? So I've currently got this on the needles, all right? So I thought I'd just quickly show you. If you could go to the overhead for me, my darling, again, please.
Yes, master.
All right, I've got a few stitches left on this row, and I'm just going to show you, okay, what happens when you get to the end of the row. Now, I'm not knitting in the round. I'm knitting straight here, all right? So I'm just going to finish this row, and then I'm going to go back the other way so that you can see what is going on here. All right. Okay. So it's straight. We're not joining it. It's straight. Okay. This is how I'm knitting my pattern. So I just wanted to say that if you had two straight needles, you could knit this on straight needles. But because I've got I think it's 56 stitches on here for this blanket, they would fall off the end of even a 40 centimetre needle, because this is super chunky yarn. So really, this is absolutely brilliant for it not falling off, okay? But with this, obviously you're not knitting in the round, so you are going backwards and forwards, okay? And therefore you do have to knit and purl, okay? There's no more magic here. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to start purling back the other way, okay? And when you're knitting stripes like this, you can catch the other colour in at the side so it doesn't hang off. But you are just literally knitting backwards and forwards. So again, a lot of people use this just for normal knitting. So you don't have to just knit in the round with circular needles. You can knit backwards and forwards straight as well. And it's just literally a way of holding all your needles in place. Holding all your stitches in place. It's very difficult to do it live with lots of people watching you.
It's all right, nobody's watching.
Are they not?
I've got a
Is
question.
everyone out playing in the snow
Yeah,
instead?
I've got some
Okay.
questions.
Yeah, go on. Come back
Here's
to
the
me.
questions. Here's
Yeah,
the
go on
questions.
then.
Coming back to you. There you go, Master.
I'll carry on knitting this while I'm talking.
Christine Atkinson on Facebook. Is there a way of making a stretchy cast off as well as cast on? Maybe for socks knitted from the toe.
Ooh, I don't know the answer to that question. I expect there is. I'd have to consult Clary on that and get back to you. If you send me a message on one of the social medias, I will get back to you on stretchy. What's the best stretchy cast off? Okay, I'm only going to show you the best stretchy cast on. I knew I'd get loads of technical questions I didn't know the answers to.
Okay, let's move on.
Let's
move on to one that you might know the answer to.
Okay, go on then.
Carol on Facebook asks, what are the little marker pins called? My picture froze as you were talking about
Okay,
them.
so I
Sorry.
either use a piece of waste yarn, doesn't matter what thickness is, nice bright colour so you can see it maybe, and just tie it round into a little circle. Or if you want to buy the ones that we sell, they're called locking stitch markers. Okay, and we sell I think we sell a pack of 30. We might be making that up. And then I think we also sell a pack of different sized ones as well, if you want large ones and small ones, but they're just like they just lock into place. Little tulips on them, these ones. Yes, any more for any more?
Something very odd going with my question thing today. I keep on getting Kerry Curtis talking about willy warmers.
Okay.
The question keeps on coming up. No, Kerry.
Well, mind you, in this weather, never say never. Right, I'm going to move the straight knitting out of the way, and I'm going to go back to my original cast on hat for the hat. All right, and I'm going to take it off the needles while you're all chatting away.
Cora Pre on Instagram says they're also super good to park a section of your knitwear to be used at a later stage.
Yes. Well, what we tend to use for those are the big sort of, they almost look like a massive safety pin. So they're like a long safety pin thing like that. They're called stitch holders. And then you put all the stitches on, like for your arms or whatever. I'm sorry I didn't know the answer about the socks and the cast off for the socks. I'm not a massive sock knitter. There, it's out in the open now. I'm not a massive sock knitter. Right, let me stop getting all tangled up with everything. I'm just going to show you long tail cast on because I love it. Have we got time? Yes, got 5 minutes. All right, so the clue's in the name. There's a long tail to the cast on. Now if I can find the end, I'll show you how to do it. I think I've got myself in a bit of a muddle now because I've got so many. Oh, I know why, because I've got one end attached to the knitting, and then when I changed colour on the other one, see, that's what it is. All right, so you've got to basically have enough yarn on your long tail, okay, for when you cast on. All right, so if I know I've got to cast on, say, let's do 30 stitches rather than 44, otherwise we'll be here all night. The way I figure it out is I take the needle I'm going to use and I wrap around 10, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I just hold that there, okay? So I know that I would need roughly that length of yarn to cast on 10. So if I want to cast on 30, I go 20, 30. So it's roughly there. Then I always add a bit for luck. A bit for luck. Okay. And then I make a little loop, which is my first stitch. Okay. Then I insert my needle. Right, now I want to show this close up and almost like in slow motion. So I'm just going to clear a space. Okay, so that we can show this. Let's not go to the super close up, Chris, but let's just go to the other shot for me, please. Can we?
Yes, Master.
Thank you. There we go. All right. So now I've got my long tail here. Okay, this is my long tail. And this is my ball of yarn. I know it's spread all over the table. Pretend it's a ball of yarn. All right. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to part that with my first finger and my thumb. Okay. And then, actually, go to the super close-up for me, please, Donnie.
Oh, you want my super close
Yeah, I
up
do
now.
now. There we go. Okay. I've parted it, my first finger and my thumb. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come round and I'm going to go under the loop of my thumb, under the loop of my finger, and up the middle. All right. I'm going to do that for you a few more times. In fact, let's do it super slow. Okay. So we're going under that loop, under the finger, up through the middle. Let's do it again. We're going under that loop, under and there. So the way I'm starting this off is I've got my long tail here, I've got my ball of yarn there. So this is to the front, that's to the back. I'm holding them open with my finger and thumb. Let me do it from the side as well. Holding it open with my finger and thumb. I'm going this under this loop, under that loop, and up through the middle. This is the long tail cast on. Under there, up through the middle. And you can see it's important to keep this nice and even at the bottom there and not do it too tightly. But as you get going, you can start to do it faster. And as you pull it here, just make sure it's nice and even and it's giving you a nice even stitch at the bottom.
Show us that last bit again when you say up through the middle.
Okay.
Because you're doing
So
that
I've got
bit
it open like this.
quickly.
Let me try and do it this way. So I'm going under that one, and then up through the middle.
That's amazing.
Under there, up through the middle. Now let's do it from the side again. Under there, up through the middle. Under there, up through the middle. Okay, and then obviously you can speed up as you go and you're counting as you go. So if you need to do 30, where are we at? Well, we won't bother counting them, but anyway, it's actually quite satisfying, weirdly satisfying long tail cast on, all right? And obviously, once you get going, you can kind of do it without looking, really. I am going to carry on looking though. Okay, so that's that. Do we have any questions about that? Because what that does is that gives you this. Okay. I'm just trying to think actually. I just cast off in the normal manner at the other end. It's not quite as stretchy perhaps. Yes, we need to look into a stretchy cast off, don't we?
There is a question.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can answer this or do it. Jan Stevens says, can you please show how to knit a small block of a different colour?
A small block of a different colour. Well, that's what I was doing here. What, with the circulars, I'm presuming is what you mean.
I'll take your...
Yeah. Well,
take
you would
word
just
for
keep
it,
going
yeah.
round. Was it Jan, did you say?
It was Jan.
Yeah. You would just keep going round, Jan. So you would just keep going, okay? And then obviously your next row round is going to be the same colour. It's going to be the green. And you're going to end up with a green block, okay? And then when you're ready to change colour again, you go back again. Is that what you mean? I'm not quite sure what you mean, to be honest. If you're talking about colour work, when you say a block, do you mean like a square? In which, if you are meaning that, that's a different tutorial, colour work. I'm not going to start talking about how to do colour work today. I just wanted to start talking about how to use these circular needles, okay? But this is certainly how you change colour. And if you wanted to say you're doing a stripe, okay? So I've done my first, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows in this colour, and then I would do another 5 rows in this colour, and then I'd go back to the original colour, and so on and so forth. I actually really don't want to do this, so I'm just going to go backwards and undo it. Another top tip, how to undo your knitting if you've gone wrong. So if you've accidentally purled instead of knitted, or accidentally knitted instead of purled, oh sorry, I'm not in the right place for your super close-up. This is how you undo your knitting, and well, just like you would undo it on a normal needle. You're just doing it in the round in the same way, okay? All right, so any more questions?
Pauline Spires says, any reason why you cast on like that? Maybe she's talking about the long tail.
Yeah, do you want to come back to me for a sec?
Do I have to?
Yes. the reason I like long tail cast on for knitting in the round, if you have a certain number of stitches, sometimes when you first cast on, if you're doing a hat, it can be a little bit tight around the circle, and the long tail cast on will give you a bit more stretch. I just think for most things it's a great cast on. I don't know, I prefer it. I prefer the way it looks. I prefer the stretch of it, especially if you were doing a cowl or something and it needed to go over your head. You're doing a hat, just you don't want like a tight band around the bottom of your hat. That I think I started doing it for hats, or maybe I started doing it for a sweater, a jumper, and I'd used a normal, I think I was doing a Mrs. Moon jumper actually, and I'd used a normal cast on and just felt like I had this tight band around the bottom of the jumper, which didn't impede, it didn't stop me from putting the jumper on, but obviously, this is nicer, it's stretchy, it's more pleasing, take my word for it. Have a go with the long tail cast on. You don't need to actually knit anything. I've
got another question.
Yeah, go on.
From Chris Cogley on Facebook.
Yeah.
So, do you need to take the different colour across the back of the work when doing a fair isle pattern?
Oh, you see, this is getting onto colour work now. What, knitting in the round fair isle? Yes, you're taking it across the back, but if it's going a long way across the back, you will need to trap it in somehow. So you don't, if it's going across a few stitches, that's fine, but you don't want to sort of leave it hanging like a big hanging loop thing. You'd need to trap it in. But yes, if you're knitting in the round with colour work, yes, you're taking it across the back.
Kerry Curtis, are you going to have a snowball fight?
Do you know what? No. Now, here's the thing. I'm not a massive fan of snow. I think it's really, really pretty, and I like to look at it from inside, out the window. I quite like walking in it briefly, maybe for 5 or 10 minutes. I've come completely unprepared this morning. I'm wearing totally inappropriate footwear. I'm just wearing some trainers, really stupidly. So I'm even going to struggle just walking to the car and not getting wet feet. But yes, there might be a small walk. Do I want to get a frozen ball of snow thrown at me?
Yeah.
Probably not. Now that you've said that and brought that up, unquestionably Chris will throw one at me, I know.
Oh yeah. Margaret Gibbon Jeffrey.
Yes.
Facebook.
Yes.
How many sets of different points do you need, or do you buy a pack of circular needles?
Well, here's the thing. So at the moment we don't sell a set, but we're about to. I have been hunting high and low for a set of needles that doesn't cost the earth, and we should have those available in the next week or so. At the moment we just sell them all separately. Like I mentioned, there's a bit of a pandemic shortage of circular knitting needles going on.
No.
So if you wanted to buy them, I tend to buy them as I go, like just see what your pattern needs. There's so many different, so they come in 25, 40, 60, 80, 100 and 120 lengths. Okay, and then you've got all of the widths as well, going right from 2 mil, and we sell them right up to these great big, I nearly swore then, these great big ones, which are 30 mil. So people use these to do the giant knitting, which I've already done a giant crochet tutorial. Same horse, different rider. You'd use these for the giant knitting, and these are brilliant because these have 150 length, so you can get the wool tops on them. Okay, so in terms of which ones you should buy, it very much depends what you want to do. If you're a little tiny, I like doing little things knitter with 4-ply, I like the Sheppy's Metropolis, then I'd go for your sort of 3 mil, 3.25 mil ish.
Sue Miller has got a very good question.
Oh, go on. Yeah.
If you divided for a V-neck, do you transfer to separate needles? Good question.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what you're going to end up doing when you're doing a sweater and when you're doing a jumper is you're going to use stitch holders to hold the stitches, say for the sleeves, while you continue around, okay? But if the jumper has been started on circulars, it will explain how to do it just using circulars. or sometimes there'll be a straight pair involved as well. But yes, you're going to be dividing, and then you're going to be you can still use the circulars, but knit back and forth straight, okay, as you're shaping the jumper, okay. So the best thing about using the circulars for a jumper, though, is doing the main body. So the bit that goes from just under your armpit down to the bottom of the jumper, where you're just going round and round and round, and it's just mindless because you're just knitting, not purling. And then, yes, you have got to put them on stitch holders, separate them off, sometimes go back and forth straight to shape.
Hills on Facebook.
Hello, Hills.
What length would you use to knit a huge blanket? King size bed, for example. Wouldn't that be a sleeping bag?
So the longest one we sell, it depends. So it depends. What yarn are you using, Hills? I'm guessing.
No idea.
I'm
she
guessing.
Doesn't say.
Well,
It's
I'm guessing
message
a
on...
super chunky if you're going to do something that enormous. If you're going to be using the wool tops and doing one of those trendy big knitted blankets, then you'd have to go for these. These are the longest ones we have, which are 150 centimetres. So that's 1.5 metres. So you're going to get quite a lot of stitches on there. And the beauty of the circular needle is that they can all bunch up together in the middle. You can get loads of stitches on. If you're doing, like a super chunky or something like that, I'd go for 120, which is the longest one. So it...
Chunky or DK, she says.
Oh, chunky or DK. Oh, DK. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the number of stitches, Hills, okay? So if you've got a pattern, if you're making it up, figure out how many stitches you're going to be using, and then you can kind of work it out. Like I think this one's 120, okay? So if you've got 120, 1.2 meters, and you need to fit on 200, 300 stitches, you can kind of figure it out according to the gauge. And all the gauges are online. So if you need to look at the gauge, the knitting gauge for double knit, I can't remember it off the top of my head, was it 28 or 22? It's all to do with a 10 centimetre square and how many stitches and how many rows. And then you should be able to work out how long a needle you need if you're making it up yourself. But yeah, the longest ones that we sell for most of the sizes is 120 centimetres. And then the smaller they go, like the smaller the actual needle, the smaller the yarn you'll be using, and therefore probably the smaller the project, and you won't need it so long. So some of the really tiny needles will come in shorter lengths. They won't come in 120. So it kind of depends on the yarn, it depends on the project. And if you do get it too long, if you're just going backwards and forwards like I am with this blanket, it doesn't really matter how long they are. It's better to have them too long than too short. But you can work it out by looking at the gauge. The other thing I was just going to say to the lady who was asking me which needles to buy, do we sell sets and everything? So yeah, I was just saying, like, if you like a really fine yarn, get yourself some selection of the small ones, the 3.25, the 3, the 2.75 maybe. If you like knitting with double knit, go for a 4 or 4.5 maybe. If you like an Aran, get yourself a 5 and a 6, maybe a 5, 5.5. Chunky is a 6 or a 7 maybe, and then a super chunky I'd use a 10, a 12. Depends on your pattern, depends what you're making. And like I said, there's so many variables, but we will have some sets in stock, hopefully like colourful ones. That's what I've been looking for. We'll have some in a week or so, hopefully, fingers crossed. Okay. Any more questions? Will I just undo the green bit that I don't want in my hat?
There is a question.
Okay, otherwise I need to talk about my next thing.
It was only a question saying, did you make the cardie? It's very pretty.
Oh God, I'm sorry, no I didn't. Do you know what? I was going to wear my Gertrude cardie that I did make this morning, but it's kind of a bit ethereal and more sort of springy, summery, and I thought I might be a bit chilly because I knew it was going to snow. So I put this one on, which, it's not made by me. Can't remember. It's Odd Molly, I think, made this. Right. What I want to talk to you about is next week's. Very, very exciting. I don't know. I mean, it's completely different to this, but I still think it's very, very exciting. It's our new macrame cord kit to make table mats. Woo! So if you want a nice project for the spring to dress your tables, got lots of colour options. Okay, I'm just going to show you some of the colours here. So we've got the yellow, obviously that's the yellow. It comes in green. This is a kit that we've put together. It comes in blue, it comes in pink, and it comes in beige. Some colours I'm a bit short of. I don't think there's much of the blue left. So these are the colour options. And then also in the kit, you're going to get your, hang on, let me just grab it. You're going to get a metre of our lovely felt that will become the backing. Just turn this one over and show the back. Okay, so it's backed in felt. You're going to get the embroidery cottons and the needles to do the bullion rose. So I'm going to be showing you how to do the bullion rose embroidery in the middle. You will also get a set of instructions. So that comes as a kit and you can choose your colour. This is under new on our website. You will also need separately, this is not included in the kit, some glue. So you can either use our new glue gun that we sell, which comes with 3 sticks, or I used, what did I use, Chris?
Gemtac for all your sticky needs.
Okay, come back to me. So, I have to contact them, don't I? The people that make Gemtac. If
No,
only just for them to
'cause-
have a good old laugh.
No, well, yeah, maybe. I need
Maybe,
to get
maybe
some
not.
reverb on my voice.
They
and
might
things.
ban you from saying that. Please refrain
Re-
from
stop saying
talking
that.
about our product. Right, yeah, so that's going to be next Sunday. We've already sold a fair amount of these, but I do have all of the colours left as we speak. It's super easy. You could do this with the kids. You could involve your friends that don't like to, you know, they don't do knitting. It's craft. It's sticking, okay? It's very, very straightforward. And actually, I mean, I'm obsessed with scallops, as we all know. So I've done a scalloped edge, but that's optional. You don't need to make a scalloped edge, as is the embroidery if you don't want to do that. I just think they look so cute. Anyway, so you can make 4 large table mats from the kit, or you could do 2 table mats and some coasters instead, some little coasters. That's all I've got today. I'm going to go and play in the snow.
Yeah?
Well, actually, I don't know. It's perfect weather to sit inside by the fire and
That,
knit
a
and
lot of people have said that.
drink hot chocolate.
Just look
really.
out the window, do some knitting.
Do some knitting. It's actually perfect. So I'll do a brief snow visit and then I'll be off. Anyway, see you next week, Sunday the 31st of January. I don't think we'll be sad to say goodbye to January, will we? So that would be a nice way to finish off the month. 11 o'clock, see you then. Oh, noisy glasses, sorry. Bye.
It's Gilliangladrag. It's Gilliangladrag.